A San Antonio man is behind bars tonight for a shooting that was sparked over Instagram posts. Frank Calvin Mosley II was arrested yesterday for shooting another man in the head. And Vanessa, this started with posts on social media?
Well, ECs, first of all, police say those two were neighbors, classmates, and longtime friends.
A calm San Antonio neighborhood in Eastside, Texas, was thrown into chaos when two friends having a mere misunderstanding resulted in a near-death situation. It was an ordinary spring evening and everyone was retiring from the day's work. But things took a drastic turn when someone called the cops to the scene shortly after. And when they arrived, a young man was seen lying on the floor with gunshot wounds to his head. What started as a minor argument about Instagram likes turned into a frightening act of violence, where 29-year-old Frank Mosley pulled a handgun on his longtime friend and neighbor. What could have pushed a guy to such lengths over something as little as a like on social media? This is the story of a shattered friendship, broken relationships, and destroyed trust. It was an ordinary spring evening in San Antonio, Texas on that March day. But for Frank Calvin Mosley II and his longtime friend, it would be a night that changed everything and destroyed their relationship. The two young men had been neighbors and classmates. They shared a bond forged over years of friendship. However, that bond began to break over something that, at first glance, seemed very insignificant: Instagram likes. The victim was a 21-year-old who had recently been engaging with posts on Mosley's girlfriend's Instagram page, liking her photos. While many would brush off such actions as innocent social media behavior, Mosley saw it differently. Reports indicate that Mosley grew increasingly upset and started perceiving his friend's actions as a violation of trust, or perhaps even an unwanted advance. What could have been resolved with a simple dialogue grew into a confrontation that neither man could have foreseen. That night, just after 10 p.m., the victim decided to address the brewing tension head-on. He went to Mosley's apartment, which was located in the East Side neighborhood of San Antonio, on the 4600 block of East Houston Street. Witnesses later described the exchange of banters that took place outside the apartment complex. According to the reports, the argument became so intense that it caught the attention of neighbors, some of whom stepped outside to see what was happening. During the confrontation, one witness noticed that Mosley had a firearm with him. At the sight of the weapon, they knew this benign verbal misunderstanding was going to grow into something they were not prepared for. While the specifics of the disagreement are unknown, what followed was very catastrophic. A single gunshot boomed out in the night, shattering the tense stillness that had settled over the dispute. Moments later, Mosley's friend lay still on the ground with a gunshot wound to the head. His assailant had fled after witnessing the mayhem he had caused. As neighbors hurried to the scene, panic broke out when they saw a man on the ground wriggling from pain. Someone immediately called 911 to notify emergency personnel about the incident. The emergency services responded swiftly on arrival. They stabilized the young guy as much as they could before transporting him to the hospital, where medical specialists fought valiantly to save his life. When his family learned the news, they were overcome with fear as they made their way to the hospital. They were uncertain if their son would ever survive. Meanwhile, Mosley was nowhere to be seen. Witnesses reported that he had fled the scene immediately after the shooting.
Frank Calvin Mosley II was arrested yesterday for shooting another man in the head. It happened back in March at an East Side apartment complex. Tonight, KENS 5 reporter Vanessa Croy is learning what led up to this.
That's how the quiet East Houston neighborhood in San Antonio was thrown into confusion. While the victim clung to life in the hospital, police began piecing together the events that had led to the shooting. Witnesses provided critical details, recounting how the victim and Mosley, once close friends, had been arguing over Mosley's girlfriend. Mosley had grown furious after noticing the victim liking her photos on Instagram.
When officers got there, they found a man who had been shot in the head. Well, after talking to witnesses and Mosley's girlfriend, investigators learned the bad blood between the two friends started after Mosley got upset because his friend was liking his girlfriend's pictures on Instagram.
What started as jealousy turned into a heated argument, and that argument ended with Mosley pulling out a gun. As police interrogated neighbors and Mosley's girlfriend, a clearer picture of the events began to form. Witnesses confirmed seeing Mosley holding a gun just moments before the shooting. However, Mosley's girlfriend admitted that the tension between the two men had been building for some time, but claimed she had never seen Mosley with a gun. Investigators, however, uncovered evidence that told a different story. On Mosley's social media accounts, they found photos of him posing with various guns. So how could she not know? These images not only contradicted the girlfriend's statement, but also became key evidence in linking Mosley to the crime. By comparing these photos to a previous booking photo on file, police confirmed his identity. The news of the shooting spread quickly, and the whole community was left reeling from it. Many people were unable to understand how something as simple as liking an Instagram post could result in such violence. Friends and neighbors who had known Mosley and the victim for years struggled to reconcile their friendship with the horrifying act they'd just witnessed. The victim's relatives found the whole situation troubling. At the hospital, doctors tried everything they could to save his life. And despite his life-threatening injuries, thankfully, he began to show signs of improvement in the weeks that followed. Through speech treatment, he gradually regained his ability to communicate, and in a breakthrough moment during one of these sessions, the victim confirmed to his family that Mosley was the one who had shot him. His testimony was very crucial to the case against Mosley, strengthening the evidence police had already gathered. However, it did take a long time before the officials could get ahead on his location.
A San Antonio man behind bars this morning accused of shooting his friend over an Instagram dispute. Frank Mosley II was arrested Monday. He's accused of shooting the victim in the head at an East Side apartment complex. It happened in March.
Mosley was eventually caught and arrested in October 2022, 6 months after the shooting. According to police records, detectives were able to identify him by comparing pictures from his social media profile to the booking photo on file with Bexar County. The young guy, who had earlier been regarded as a friend and neighbor, now faced serious allegations, including aggravated assault with a lethal weapon and evading arrest. After a lengthy debate in court, his bond was set at $750,000. The arrest provided some comfort to the victim's family and the San Antonio neighborhood, but it also left a lasting sense of worry. How can a minor social media disagreement become such a big deal? The incident led to different people talking about Mosley's jealousy, emotional instability, and the role social media plays in relationships today. Anyone who later heard about Frank Mosley and his friend's story was struck. They couldn't understand how little misunderstandings or unchecked emotions can spiral so badly out of control. How can something as insignificant as liking an Instagram be the catalyst for a deadly fight? This type of incident can have a long-lasting effect on the people. It makes us think long and hard about how important it is to communicate, resolve disagreements, and control our emotions. Because if you fail to control your emotions, they will turn around and control your actions, and that's not good. Mosley paid a heavy price for his actions, a life sentence of remorse and 25 years in jail. His case proceeded through the courts with immense speed in the weeks that followed, and the victim's testimony further helped to build a tight case against him. He ultimately received a 25-year jail sentence for his crime. After serving 25 years, he will be eligible for parole under the statute, which might allow for an early release. The sentencing was just a tiny step in the right direction for the victim's family, but it was insufficient to make the agony of what had happened go away. Despite his recovery, Mosley's friend still has a long way to go. He will probably live the rest of his life with the psychological and physical wounds from that night. In a different incident, Another man named Frank Mosley was found guilty in September 2024 of killing a pregnant lady in Milwaukee, Wisconsin through hit-and-run driving. This 21-year-old Frank Mosley killed Erin Mogensen, a pregnant lady, in a hit-and-run accident because he was driving carelessly. Erin and her unborn child were murdered in the collision, which happened in the 29th week of her pregnancy. Mosley was exceeding 100 miles per hour at the time of the crash, and without waiting to offer any assistance or even stopping, he struck Erin's car and ran away. Unfortunately, Erin passed away, and her child also died. After Mosley was caught, he was convicted of driving recklessly and given a 40-year jail term as a result. After serving his time, Mosley will also have to be under supervision for another 10 years, meaning he'll be closely watched even after his release. It is important to remember that Frank Mosley is not the same person as the one involved in the shooting in San Antonio. They just happen to share the same name, but their crimes are completely different. If you enjoyed this video, give us a hand by clicking on like and subscribe. Also, check out our latest update by clicking the video on your screen now.